Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
You are earlier than most of the people that we interview on this show. Don't worry.
Yeah. I know how it goes, mate, but I am a bit of a nightmare. So I do apologise. My bad. But we're fucking here. Let's go.
Lovely.
Well, you're on the other side of the coin now, aren't you? You're on the other side of the coin with whereas before you were the fighter turning up for the interviews a lot. I suppose now with the Believe You Me pod, you're waiting on the fighters and you're like, bloody hell, are they going to turn up? Are they going to wind me up?
Yeah, I hate it. I hate it because I die inside every time. It's like, what is going on? Am I some kind of media member now? Do you know what I mean? I'm asking, like today, I've got Calvin Cater jumping on my podcast. I'm like, mate, can you jump on my podcast? Before I was the guy that they were coming to me, and now I'm going around cap in hand, begging for interviews like some broke former washed up fighter with one eye. Hold on a minute.
Well, let's flip the script back and make you the star of the show again.
Let's go.
A big warm welcome and a hello to Michael the Count Bisping. How are you, mate?
How are you, mate?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really, really appreciate it. Great to talk to you. Been a fan of the in-betweeners for many, many years. But yeah.
You've made my life, mate. That's such a compliment. And mate. We'll get onto it later, how much of a fan I've been of you over the years. So it's nice that it's mutual. It's nice.
Yeah. There you go. Well, it's lovely to talk to you, fellas. And yeah, man, nice to talk to you.
Wonderful. Well, should we just scale it right back to start with, Blake?
Yeah, let's do it. So, I mean, we always start this show with a kind of how you got into martial arts and how much that maybe was impacted by your upbringing, where you grew up. I know it's Clitheroe. Yep. Was that an area where you felt like you had to be tough? And did the area of Clitheroe influence your decision to get into mixed martial arts as a child or as a young man?
Yeah. So, and by the way, and forgive my ignorance, so it's Stu and Blake. Do you guys do martial arts? Do you have any background in that type of stuff yourself, or are you just fans of the UFC?
I've done Muay Thai for about 10 years.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, just wondered. So, yeah, listen, I can't sit here and pretend that I come from the fucking mean streets of Clitheroe, because Clitheroe is a lovely little town. Do you know what I mean? It's not like I grew up in like the ghetto parts of Manchester or anything like that. Growing up in Clitheroe, it's a lovely, nice, old-fashioned market town. Lots of great people, you know. I started doing martial arts, I think, when I was about 8 years old. And in our house growing up, you know, it was kind of a volatile household, shall we say, with respect. But it just was, you know. And then I started doing martial arts, as I said, when I was about 8, because I followed my older brother, Conrad. You know, I was tagging along. Me and him, you know, we'd watch like the old Rocky movies or Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, whatnot. And then we'd always end up with a shadow box in the front room. That had turned into a proper fight. And by a proper fight, I mean, he'd kick the crap out of me. And that's pretty much how it went. So, yeah, went off to this local jiu-jitsu gym, Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is very different from Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And, yeah, I was obsessed with it because I was crap at football as a kid. And, you know, growing up in England and primary school or whatever, if you're not good at football, you're not doing much else. So I had 2 left feet, but fortunately with this martial arts, all of a sudden I was winning tournaments and things like that. And I was getting bloody trophies and my dad was sticking me in the local paper. So obviously for me, that felt great. And that's what kept me kind of obsessed with it because I was good at it. And I finally had an identity and, fortunately, all these years later, still paying off.
So when was the point in your life where you went, oh, this isn't just a hobby. This isn't just something I do for fun that I'm good at. This is a way that I could actually pay the bills?
Good question. And that came a lot later in life. See, when I was younger, I never looked as martial arts as a way of making a living. And to be honest, until quite recently, it never really was, unless you opened a string of dojos or whatever it was. And you became like, you know, very, very heavily involved in the martial arts world. Being a competitive fighter as a martial artist, that's not something that ever occurred to me. I just loved it. I just enjoyed it. Now, I left school in 16. I stopped doing martial arts around a similar time. So yeah, I discovered house music and I wanted to be a DJ and I kind of forgot about all that stuff. I thought, jumping about in a gi in your pajamas. Come on, no, that ain't for me. I'm going to be a DJ now. I'm very much all or nothing. So I stopped doing that. And I put all my efforts into being a DJ. And of course, along with that, there was I discovered alcohol around that time as well. So I just started hanging out with my mates. And while I had a great laugh, for a few years, it was definitely a few years wasted. Do you know what I mean? But hey, listen, I was finding myself, you know what I mean, as much as anything else. And around that time, Clitheroe, as I said, is a lovely place, but it was, I'd be lying if I didn't say there was kickoffs every weekend in the pubs. It was just, and rightly or wrongly, I found myself involved in a lot of those. From there, it's a slippery slope. You know what I mean? I found myself getting arrested by the police. And unfortunately, when I was a kid, I was in the paper for doing martial arts. A couple of times, I'm ashamed to say it, I was now in the paper because I've been arrested, at the weekend for getting in bar fights and things like that. And looking back now, it's a period of my life that I'm ashamed of. But when I was younger, as I said, growing up, it was a volatile household. That's a very polite way of putting it. And I, as a young man at 16 years old, I didn't think there was anything wrong with cracking someone. By the way, I'm not talking people. I was never a bully or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? But there was a lot of idiots about, and I was one of them. If I'm brutally honest. Ended up doing a short stint in prison. Again, very, very much the low point of my life. But they always say you got to hit rock bottom before you figure that you've got to turn things around, And it was that. And I thanked that judge. It was only 28 days. It was only a public order charge. But, I was never a criminal. I was never a drug dealer. I was never involved in it. I just got in a lot of bar fights because I was a young, angry kid. Do you know what I mean? And if we went in depth, I have very much reason to be angry. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not going to get into that stuff. But I did. I was angry at the world. Do you know what I mean? For whatever reason. And yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. Ended up going to prison. And it was when I was sitting in the holding cell, waiting to go to my cell. I was looking around. And no offense to these people in there, but I'm like, I am fucking better than these people. I am not one of these. And I thought, wow, is this it? Is this where my life has come? I'm sitting in there and there was a football game on some little TV high up. And like some guy, all right, mate, what you in for? I'm like, fuck off, don't talk to me. I'm not one of you. Do you know what I mean? And I thought right then and there, I've got to make a change. So, and we had 2 children. Well, no, my first son was my wife was pregnant. Do you know what I mean? My wife's pregnant and I'm locked up on some petty public order charge just for being a jack the lad, a dickhead, whatever you want to call it. Do you know what I mean? But just being dumb. As I say, I was never a criminal per se. Of course, acting the way I was in public is a criminal offense, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I was never
how do you deal with that, Mike, at that point? Sitting in that cell and like knowing that your wife was pregnant and, you'd done something you shouldn't have done and, you're in there paying the price for it. Like, how did you sort of mentally process that? And kind of accept why you was there and what you'd done and deal with the decisions of like, what am I going to do moving forwards? Like, what was that process? What was going on in your head at that time?
Well, it was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I never forget, it's one of the lowest parts of my life when my wife came to visit me in prison with a bloody belly out here, pregnant with my first child. Do you know what I mean? If that doesn't send a warning sign, if that doesn't tell you, I'll give you a kick up the backside and tell you got to get your act together here, then nothing will. Do you know what I mean? Unless you're a moron or not a good person. So anyway, I came out, got a job, for the first time, held down a job for a while, just, factory work, nothing special. And it was actually my boss at the time that said, he said, Michael, he said, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? You seem like a pretty switched on, smart young kid. He said, but before you know it, 20 years are going to pass by and you're not going to be young anymore. So give it some thought. So I did. And I kept coming back to the same thing every time. Become a professional fighter because I was very good at it. And I knew that. And I knew it wasn't misplaced arrogance or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? I had a lot of success as a martial artist. I also had a lot of success in my extracurricular martial arts, shall we call it? And I knew I could handle that. And I started looking into it and I tracked down this old sensei and he told me all about the explosion of mixed martial arts, the UFC, and that, you can make a real living. So anyway, it took a long time to answer your question. That is when I found out about it. I quit work a few months later. I moved down to another city and I started my official training to become a mixed martial artist. And that was the turning point in my life. And even when we got the phone call that night, my wife, who's just been incredibly supportive, and if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She said that night when he called me up and told me all about it, and he made me a proposition. He said, I'll cover your bills if he made me an offer if I quit work and train under him and stuff. She said right then and there, I knew that was the turning point of our life, you know, and she was right.
Yeah, she seems to have been such an amazing and positive impact on your life. You speak so fondly and so highly of her, both in the film that we'll get to a bit, and also in your book in Quitters Never Win, which I read a while ago and I absolutely loved. There was and I think we'll touch on your wife maybe later, because she does seem to have such an amazing impact on you and you speak so well about her. But there's one bit of the book of Quitters Never Win that scared the living shit out of me, Michael, if I'm honest. I
know where this is going.
Yeah, I read that part of the book and I was like, have you seen that episode of Friends where Joey puts The Shining in the fridge because he's so scared? That's basically what I was doing with your book at the time of reading this part of it. And I don't know how much you want to talk about it because it's not featured in the documentary, but Stu doesn't know this story. And it's the story of you going home late at night one night and a guy tries to break into your house while you're there. And honestly, it's a terrifying story, and I don't want you to relive any trauma. But if you're okay with talking about it, I'd love for you to kind of just tell any of our listeners that haven't heard it, and Stu as well, kind of basically what happened, because it is quite amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. And again, this just kind of exemplifies that I was upsetting some of the wrong people, you know, because I still to this day don't know who did this. But the story goes, it was, you know, I was partying a lot back then with my friends, you know. We went out Thursday night, it was pretty epic. We went out the Friday night, and then Saturday we're out drinking during the day. And I'm like, guys, I'm exhausted. I'm going home. Now, throughout those couple of nights that I had, there was some kickoffs with some people around town, maybe some people that shouldn't have been upset, some people, you know, whatever. We won't go into those stories. Anyway, so it's Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, about 6, 7 o'clock at night. I said, boys, that's it. I'm tapping out. I'm knackered. I'm going home. I need a good night's sleep. And I was living in this little flat by myself at the time, behind this, above a greengrocer's, little old school greengrocers. And you could only get in the flat one way, round the back, because obviously the front of it was a greengrocer's. Can't go through there. So I go into bed. I didn't get into bed. I go into the flat and I lie on the bed, right? And it's an old like PVC fake leather couch from like the 70s. It was grim. It was a crap hole. I was 17 or 18 at the time, you know, paying 50 quid a week rent. Anyway, so I'm living there and I'm lying on the couch watching some crappy old movie. And as I'm led there, I hear like a knock, but it's quiet. I think, did I hear someone knocking at the door? I think, nah, carry on watching this film. And again, little knock. I think, hold on a minute, I did hear a knock. So I mute the TV. And I'm waiting there. I think, no, there's no one there, because otherwise they'd still be banging. If someone's trying to get your attention, they bang a lot, you know? So I'm like, and I'm just about to turn the sound on the film again. And then all of a sudden, there it is, real quiet though. Another knock. I'm thinking, what is going on? Because as I say, if it was someone that wanted me, it'd be boom, 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 boom. And my mates would be like, Mick, open the door. What are you doing? You know what I mean? So I tiptoe to the back door. And I'm standing there, and the doors, you know, I'm just standing there in the dark. It's like it's about midnight now, 11:30, something like that. So it's pitch black outside, and I'm standing there, and I'm thinking, I'm losing my mind. What am I doing, tiptoeing by the back door? And I'm about to walk to the front, and then sure enough, there it is. Very quiet again. I'm like, there's someone there on the other side of that door that is knocking intermittently every couple of minutes, very, very quietly. Now I'm not on more, and I'm like, this is unusual. So I say, hello? And they go, like a muffled voice, hello? I'm like, who is it? They say, John. I said, John who? They went, John, as if, you know, John. And in my mind, I said, yeah, it's John. So I open the door and I get sprayed in the face with CS gas. So I fall back, I'm holding my arms, I'm like, oh. And then when I look up, there's a guy standing there, black boots, black like tracky pants, a black bomber jacket, and a black balaclava / Ku Klux Klan hood. It wasn't a normal balaclava. It had like a pointy top. and it just had 2 circles for the eyes and 1 circle for the mouth, and he's holding a can of petrol, and he's throwing petrol all over with his teeth like that. I'll never forget his teeth, throwing petrol all over the place, and I shit my pants like you wouldn't believe. Now, you want to sound tough and you want to say in those situations you're going to be a man and this and that. I'm telling you, mate, that scared the living daylights out of me, and I'm screaming my head off, who is it? Anyway, so I run I'm in the kitchen now. I run into like the little front room, and there was a glass door between the front room and the kitchen. So I shut that door, and I pick up the phone, I dial 999, and I'm screaming, you're going to send someone to my house? There's someone here to try to kill me. And they're like, calm down, sir, calm down. Do you want fire, ambulance, or police? I'm like, you don't understand. Send somebody now. I think I'm getting nowhere here. So I hang up the phone, and I call up my ex-girlfriend. And by the way, this guy now has stopped swinging petrol around, and he's just watching me. He's just watching me, and it's like he doesn't believe I'm actually talking to somebody. And then I call up my ex-girlfriend. And I'm like, send someone to the house, to someone here, the police don't. Anyway, I'm panicking. And it was at that point, he drops the petrol and he pulls out a lump hammer, right? And he just comes marching towards me. And it's then I close the door, right? And I've got the door handle in one hand, I've got the phone in the other hand. And it's just like a wooden frame, and the rest of it's all glass. And I'm there like that. And he comes right up to the glass, and he gets the hammer, and he just goes ding, ding, ding on the glass like that. And I'm like, holy shit. Right. And I'm thinking, who the hell could this be? And it's like a process of elimination in my mind. And I come up with this name of this guy that unfortunately I had a run-in with on Thursday. And I went, is that you? I said his name. I don't want to say his name here. And I said his name. And at that point, the guy took a step back. So I thought it was him. So I opened the door. He swings at me with a lump hammer. Anyway, he runs off in the night. He gets away. The police show up. They start investigating. And they found that because I was DJing at the time, and the bedroom window was open where the decks were. He'd climbed in through the window during the day. And where the phone was, there was a wire going up on the little unit. And he'd been in during the day, and he'd cut that wire. And the reason he cut the wire, because he thought he was cutting the phone line. Turns out he disconnected the doorbell. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, there you go. That's that. Never stayed another night in that apartment ever again. Went running back to my mum's house with my tail between my legs.
But you never found out who it was.
I don't. I have an idea. Because I was and who it is. I was in this local nightclub one night, and I'm pretty sure it's him. And I went up to him. I said, "He's not called John." I said, "All right, John." He goes, "What are you talking about? You know my name?" I went, "Yeah, but you go as John sometimes, don't you?" And he just kind of looked at me and then walked off. Yeah. But I don't know it was him. I don't know it was him. Do you know what I mean? So I can't be. You know what I mean?
But whoever it was, whether it was
a psycho.
Whether it was John, air quotes, or someone else, do you reckon they've seen Michael Bisping now become UFC champion and this just massive deal? What a weird thing for them to be like, I nearly set that guy's house on fire, and he's now this incredibly what a weird thing for them.
Well, yeah, because like I've told this story personally before putting it in a book, you know what I mean? And some people always say, so where's that guy now? And this sounds bad. He's dead. And it's not like I had anything. He died in a car crash, God bless him. So God rest his soul. But do you know what I mean? If you wanted to sound gangster, you could go, mate, no chance. He's dead. Do you know what I mean? He's not about anymore. No, it wasn't like that. That guy who I thought it was, sadly, very, very sadly passed away in a car accident. You know what I mean? So he's not around anymore.
Right. Bloody hell. What a story that is. I mean, and you see what I mean, though? That I was reading that, and I'm not very good with anything remotely scary. I actually was in I'll plug my own horror film called The Kindred that's out now. But I'll
check it out.
I was at the premiere of that, and I was sat on a row that was like the actors in the cast were kind of like given this other area, and there was like hardly anyone on my row. All the kind of like proper people were like downstairs, which is like the cast and that upstairs. And as soon as the violin starts going and you know something's coming, I'm there watching it like through my eyes, like pretending like, and I'm like, got my eyes shut and all that. And I thought, it's all right. There's no one really around. No one will see that I'm scared. And the next thing I know, as I'm doing this, I get a tap on the shoulder, which scares me a little bit. And I go, it's a woman that's going, excuse me, can I go to the toilet, please? Because I was blocking her way to the toilet because I was too scared to watch my own film that I was in. So listening to your story in the book shit me up really bad.
Dear. Well, in our house, Yeah, in our house, I never get to watch anything scary. My wife or my son, you know, you think my son's 20 years old. You think he'd back me up on like a bit of a scary movie choice, but anything remotely spooky or scary doesn't get a looking in this house. My wife says, I don't want to feel scared. So why would I watch something that is designed to make you scared? That is an emotion I don't like feeling. And I'm like, well, I guess you can't really argue with that logic. Do you know what I mean? But I'm like, we're missing out on a very wide genre of movies and TV shows. So next time we're led there in bed and we're struggling to find a show on Netflix, don't ask me.
Well, you mentioned your son there, and I saw a great Instagram post about a month ago where you just come in from work, you're looking sharp, you got your shirt and tie on, and straight away Callum's on you, and he's trying to ragdoll you around the kitchen, and the rest of the family are laughing and filming. And I just wondered, like, obviously seeing that his career really progressing within wrestling, like, what are your thoughts on him, you know, potentially, you know, finding himself in the world of combat sports?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my father always supported me, you know, and he drove me all over the country as a kid doing these tournaments, and he still to this day supports me in any way he can. So obviously, I would support my son if that's a decision that he makes. Now, he does amateur wrestling. Hopefully, he's going to represent the UK at the Commonwealth Games and maybe go on to the Olympics. He's a very, very good wrestler. But out here in America, this just is part of the fabric. It's built into the culture. You know, at school, there's a wrestling team. You don't have to do it. And much like me, he wasn't very good at sports, but he's found a sport that he does love, and he's on a scholarship at San Francisco State University. So I'm immensely proud of him. But he's a really, really smart kid, and he's doing a master's degree in business. And I always say, I fought so they don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not for everybody. And I did this to provide my family with the best possible chance. He's living out here in Orange County. He's going to college in San Francisco. He's got more opportunities and things at his fingertips that he can go down. I never went to college. He's doing a goddamn master's degree, you know? So if he wanted to, as a competitor, I would, of course, appreciate it. But I don't think he will. You know, a lot of the fighters on the UFC roster saying, everybody, oh crap, I think I unplugged the microphone. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, you did. Just
you're
come
back
out,
on there. You come out.
Yeah. No, because there's a wire here. I'm very animated. Anyway, no, what was I saying? You gotta have a little bit of a screw loose. Let's be honest. To a certain degree, you can love the martial arts aspect of it. You can all that stuff, but to step foot in there and fight another man, tooth and nail, in a pair of shorts and 4-ounce gloves, you know, I don't know if he's got that nastiness in him. You've got to have the ability to, when a man's already hurt, to grab him by the ears and drive your face into him as hard as you can and knock him out, you know, because if you don't do that to him, he's going to do that to you. And it is a tough sport. It's a brutal sport. It's a beautiful sport. And the amount of time and effort it takes to become accomplished, to be able to do that is extremely challenging. He could do that, but I don't know if he's got that nastiness in him to do what I just said.
Yeah. We always ask fighters this, and it's something that we don't necessarily see too much of in the film. Obviously, we'll get on to the film and your fights and your career, but we're always interested to know what your process was before you walked out into so many ridiculously big crowds, to the roar of that crowd. Like, what is that sort of 10, 15 minutes before you walk out, when you're in that room? What was your process, Mike?
That's always the toughest part, the final little bit of preparation before you make your walk, even doing the walk and right before, until the referee says fight. And it kind of builds from that point onwards. And it can be fear, it can be pressure, it can be nerves, anxiety, whichever one of those words you want to use. And that's when the self-doubt starts creeping in. And as I say, you can call it nerves, you can call it fear, you know. Now, it's never fear of the actual fight, right? Because we go and spar 3 times a week getting ready for a fight. You know, you kind of get conditioned, as weird as it sounds. You take a punch to the face or whatever. You're not scared of the physical feeling that you're about to experience. The nerves come from, am I going to win? Am I going to be successful? I've dedicated my entire life to this, and every fight is the most important fight of your life, you know, and it always escalates. And this determines where your career is going to go. Am I going to end up becoming a champion? Am I fighting for, are you going to be world champion? You know, or are you going to continue to grow in your mission to be there, to be a number 1 contender or whatever it is? And there's so many things you're asking yourself. You're like, did I do enough running? Is my cardio on point? How good is this guy's jiu-jitsu? Oh, I've heard he hits really hard. Can I take his punches? How strong is he going to be when we lock up? You know, and you're standing there and you're looking across your opponent when you're in the ring and he looks at you. and you're trying to act tough, you know, and you're trying to puff out your chest. But the reality is, inside you, anything tough, there's so many questions, and people can, you know, maybe not everyone goes through that, but I think most fighters do until you start fighting. And then you're on autopilot, you know, and then you're doing what you've been trained to do. And, you know, you might win, you might lose, but that's always the worst part. And to have the confidence comes from the preparation, you know. So if you've done the work necessary, they'll give you the confidence. And to answer your question, and I've got a long way of doing so, I used to go sit down at a quiet part of the room, think about all the sacrifices I made, think about my family, think about my wife, my children, why I do this. And that's what I always did towards the end. And then I figured out that was the wrong thing to do, because by doing that, I would sit there and try and get myself in the zone. And this is what I'm going to do. But that's not the right thing to do. You've got to go out there and fight kind of with a carefree attitude. You cannot be angry, right? That's what I used to try and do. Think about all the sacrifices, everything I've done. Okay, let's get ready. Come on, serious. No, it took me a long time. It took me almost to the end of my career. If you're mad, if you're angry, frantic state of mind, whatever you want to call it, you're never the best version of yourself. So how are you going to go out and fight one of the best martial artists on the planet? You can't be acting out of emotion or anything like that. You're just going to be cool, calm, and collected and in the moment, which is very hard to do in a high pressure situation like that. But that is the mindset that you want to have. Now, I'm not an expert. I don't even think I mastered it, but I started realizing that and working towards that in the last few fights of my career.
And one of those being, you know, walking out of the O2, and I mean, you know, you're about to fight one of the greats, if not the greatest. And as you're walking out there, you've got the roar of the fucking O2, and they're all behind you. Like, how does that feel? Just talk us through like that minute or however long it takes. Like, does it go quick or does it feel like a lifetime making that walk?
Yeah, every experience has been different, but it's one of the best feelings in the world. I'll just start by saying that. Walking out there and getting a lot of, the crowd cheering for you, or even sometimes if you're in enemy territory. I just loved it as long as they showed emotion. But there's so much going through, because like towards the end of my career, I had an eye injury that I was like, you know, ducking and diving, the doctors and all the rest of it, you know, and there's a camera right in front of you and they shine this light, right? Because obviously for TV, it's going to be bright, and in the O2, it's dark, you know, and the light's bloody blinding you and you're like, get out of the way. But this is all the part of the TV production, and you're walking through and your cornerman behind you, and there's a bloody camera right in your face, and the light is actually blinding you, and people are trying to grab you, and you're like, holy shit, keep it together. But if you're confident, if you've done your training, then you enjoy the experience for the most part.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the eye injury there, which is obviously a huge factor in your story in the documentary as well. On that subject with the eye, obviously, like fighters taking performance enhancing drugs has had an impact on obviously your health. We just discussed your career as well. At one point, I think basically any losses you'd had were to fighters that either had or were going to pop for PEDs at some point. It's had a real impact on your career. And obviously you talk openly in the documentary about Vitor Belfort and that fight and that kick that detached the retina in your right eye. It was your right eye, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. And recently, Aljamain Sterling was on a podcast saying that he felt like anyone that had been caught taking PEDs in like a combat sport should serve jail time. And obviously, if there's anyone in the world of MMA that has got something to say about that we should all listen to, it's you. Do you agree with that statement that people that are caught with taking PEDs in combat sports should serve some kind of jail time or be tried or something like that?
I don't believe so. However, though, I could see the formulation of a case that you could prosecute someone criminally, because just because you test positive, which by the way, shame on you, right? We're not playing football here. We're not trying to put a ball in the back of the net. We're trying to take out another man or woman with our bare fists. You know, that's the reality of the sport. And it can be very dangerous. It's already dangerous enough without people then chemically enhancing their bodies. So I'm massively against that. Everybody knows that. But for that, maybe if you went in there and you beat somebody, like for what happened to me, and they lose an eye, Well, yeah. I mean, maybe a fancy lawyer could find the correct wording, but I get what Aljamain Sterling is saying there, and I appreciate it. But I mean, because the reality is as well, and I'm not making excuses for them. Sometimes there is some occasions where I do believe it's accidental. They've ingested a supplement, because I spoke to the guy that runs USADA, who does the testing, because I didn't believe that nonsense for a minute. And he said, no, he said, the way it is, Michael. And he explained the whole process. He says, sometimes we have found that it was totally accidental, and there's different supplements on the tools that they then start, like they're all made at similar factories. And 1 minute they might be doing one product, and then the next minute they're doing the next product, and they don't clean the materials down or something. So things gets in, batches get contaminated. And again, it sounds nonsense, but that's what he told me. And he runs USADA. So I'm like, all right, well, I've got to listen to him. But anyway, so Aljamain, love you, buddy, but come on, can't start throwing everyone in jail.
Well, I mean, one of the other big turning points in your career seemed to be moving over to America and joining up with Jason Perillo. You've got the T-shirt on.
There we go.
You got the Perillo boxing T-shirt on. Why was Perillo the man for you? What was it about your relationship, his dynamic matched with yours, that made him the guy that would eventually lead you to a title with, as you've just said, with one eye?
So I'm not sure if it's in this one, but there was another one that I did years ago. So I'm getting confused. So my apologies. I think it might have been the UFC one that they did on me a long time ago when I won the belt. It's called My Destiny. And he says it best on there. He said, when he met me, he said he knew he had a real fighter on his hands. He knew he had someone with the drive, determination, and the physical qualities that you want, and the skills. He said, but he had no direction. And I didn't. I was just going out there and fighting on instinct. You know what I mean? And I didn't know what I was doing. I was going from one fight to the next. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I wasn't controlling my emotions, as I said. And that was one of the biggest things that he did. Of course, he improved my boxing and all the rest of it. And I had a great place to train. And we brought in great coaches, and we came up with game plans and things. But he worked on this more than anything, because fighting is such a mental sport, believe it or not, right? When you walk in there, you can win or lose a fight at the weigh-ins. You know what I mean? You can get a mental edge over your opponent, or if, as I said before, going in there frantic, kind of wound up, being angry. That's not the way to be. And I remember when I fought for the world title on 2 weeks' notice, I was filming Triple X in Toronto. I finished that. I flew down. I had 2 weeks. Well, basically 1 week to train, and then it's fight week is what they call it. And I was always getting angry in training if things weren't going well. And my jiu-jitsu coach, Brady Fink, one day we're doing jiu-jitsu. He's a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. That's what I've got him there for. He's good. So he's getting me in positions, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm flipping out, because of the pressure, and it's not going well. And Jason stopped me right then and there. And I'll never forget this. He said, Michael, listen. He said, you're at the pinnacle of the sport. Right? He said, after this fight, who knows? You might be champion of the world, but maybe you lose. Maybe you lose that fight. And maybe this is it. This is the best moment of your career, and it's not going to get any better. And there's thousands of people all over the world that want to be in this position right now. And as I say, I believe you're going to win the belt. I believe you're going to be the champ, but maybe you're not. And maybe this is it. He says, so how about we go through this next week with a fucking smile on our face? Or do you want to be angry? Do you want to be angry and feel the pressure and all the rest of it? Or should we enjoy this moment? This is a crowning of all your hard work. This is what it's built to. Head of pay-per-view at the legendary forum where Muhammad Ali has fought, and you're fighting for the world middleweight belt. How about you smile and we all go through this happy and enjoy the process? And I thought, wow, can't argue with that. Cannot argue with that. But yeah, that's one example of how he helped me on many, many occasions.
You mentioned about the weigh-in, and just talk us through, because you hear people say, you're looking into their soul when you have that stare down, and would you take stuff from that? Like when you'd have them, is it just for the media, or are you gaining something from looking them in the eyes? And normally at a Michael Bisping weigh-in, you'd be telling them what you're going to do as well, and it was never a quiet affair. But what would you get from that?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's kind of threefold, and I can't pretend that, listen, it was all strategy and it was all this, all mind games and blah, 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 blah. There was 3 reasons. Number one, there is the psychology there, right? This is my last chance to get in my opponent's face and let him know, hey, bud, tomorrow night, you're going to be locked in a cage with me, okay? And I'm going to have my way with you, you know? And I definitely didn't word it that politely, but still, that's your last chance. And you might instill a little bit of doubt in them, a little bit of fear. They might go to bed that night going, oh, geez, I'll tell you what, I'm in for a nightmare tomorrow, aren't I? He's mental. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't work on everybody. Right, it doesn't. Some people are just they're rock solid. You cannot break their spirit or whatever. But some people it does. Okay. Another side of it is you're trying to sell the fight to the public. You know what I mean? It's pay-per-view. You want more people to buy it. And I'll be honest, as a fan, it's lovely to see the respecting martial arts and they're all bowing to each other and shaking hands and wishing each other a great fight. And that is lovely. But as a fan, when two people are going at one another, you're like, oh, God, this is going to be a good one. It's going to kick off tomorrow. So there's that side of it. But then I'll be honest as well. And I'll also say that when I'm fighting someone, it's animalistic. It brings out that side in me, you know, and you're my enemy until it's over, until it's done. You're going to try and knock me out unconscious tomorrow. And I shouldn't have done, but I did. I used to kind of take that personally. And as I say, my rival, my enemy, and it depended what leaded up to it in that event. So, because not everyone was like that. I was often, you know, if they didn't say anything bad or, you know, they weren't, you know, like some people said things about my family and whatnot. Well, that's personal. Do you know what I'm saying? And it goes to another level, but it wasn't always like that. But that's kind of, you know, the three kind of takes from that.
And I guess one of the highest profile kind of battles and war of words and trash talk was obviously with Luke, who's in the film.
Yeah.
Like surprised to see him in it. So where's the real? I mean, I did see something maybe a year or so ago on Instagram when you was in the gym and he was kicking a bag and you went and had a bit of banter with him. Where's the landline now? Your pals now?
Yeah, listen, I wish him nothing but the best. You know what I mean? He's friends with some of my friends like Daniel Cormier. You know, them two are very, very close. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for DC. And I always said, well, if DC likes him, he can't be that bad. Do you know what I mean? And he's all right. He's just misunderstood a bit. But more importantly, he had what I wanted. He was the champ. I wanted the belt. Simple as that. Yeah, but we're all right. And I got to say, it was very gracious of him to come on and do the film because, and we got to thank Jason Perillo for that happening because the lads who filmed it, you know, the camera crew and whatnot, they went down to the gym. They was filming Jason and Luke was in town at the time training with Jason. And Jason said, well, you know what? I can shoot him a message for you and see if he'll do it. And as I say, fair play to the guy. He did. He said some bad stuff, but we edited that bit out.
I have to say,
it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows coming out of Luke's mouth. But that's the beauty of editing, buddy. We got you, Luke.
No, I have to say I was quite surprised because I think the film basically at one point you say, I don't like him. And then a few minutes later he's in it. And I'm like, hang on a minute. He must be all right with him if he's in the film as well.
He's all right.
He charged you a lot, didn't he? Come on.
Well, the thing was, I fought him 2 times. And the first time, you know, he beat me fair and square. But the reality of that fight is that I last training day before I flew out to Australia, somebody kneed me in the face when we were doing jiu-jitsu on the floor, trying to get out of a submission that I had him in. And it opened up a huge gash above my good eye. And that all got stitched up. But in the fight, he stuck a little headbutt on me that the referee didn't notice. And it sounds like an excuse. Of course it is. All fighters have them, but it's true. So the blood was going into my good eye, right? And I kept wiping it away. And this eye doesn't work, right? And that's a story for another day. But so the blood's going into this eye. So I'm wiping and it was wiping my eye, but it was all smeared with red. So imagine if you put a tub of paint onto a windscreen of a car and you put the wipers on, it's just going to smear eventually, isn't it? So that's what I could just like see red. And that's all I can see. And then the blood would come in again. So I'd wipe it. And on one occasion, he kicked me in the head and I didn't see it coming. And he got me in a guillotine. God bless him. Good for him. You know what I mean? But I couldn't say why it was, because if I'd have said that, I was rumbled and I would never be able to fight again. So I just there was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew I could do better than that. I knew because, you know, so that's why I was so confident when the opportunity came to fight him again on 2 weeks' notice. I took it gladly.
How scary was it for you? Because obviously we've mentioned the eye. You spent a decent part of the end of your career, as you said, kind of sort of tricking the doctors into clearing you and then fighting with one eye. Were you ever at a moment going, Michael, mate, you're in one of the most dangerous sports in the world, fighting some of the elite level guys who a lot of media members and pundits wrote you off against a lot of these top guys, not knowing about your eye situation. And then you're there with one eye. Did you ever have any moments where you went, I think I should, for my own health, pack it in before you got to the stage where you actually did?
Yeah, well, I remember, and trust me, that was the running commentary throughout my household, and anybody that in the know or doctors or whatever, that was often said to me. Now, the thing was, I just moved out to California, bought this big stupid house that I didn't need. I had some fraudulent, completely made up court case from my former management who weren't operating on the correct side of the law. They were shady characters. So they were suing me, and that recently got thrown out of court recently, by the way. But that went on for 10 years, and it was costing me a fortune in legal battles. There was no way I couldn't fight. You know what I mean? This was all I had, you know? And I did trick doctors, and I did do whatever I needed to, and commissions. And I remember going into certain tests, and if they covered up one eye, how many fingers that were holding up and stuff. And I had, this was at, for UFC events, you got to get cleared by their doctors as well. And so me and Prillo came up with a code, if you hold up one finger, just give a little cough and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And I remember one time this doctor, he looked at my eye. I cheated on the test. I'd memorized it. It's a long story. Anyway, he says, Michael, okay, well, you're clear to fight, but don't. He said, if anything happens to your other eye, you're going to go blind. He said, and I'm sure you've got children. You want to see them grow old. And I'm like, yeah, I'll consider it, doc. All right. Yeah. Ooh, it's a tough one, isn't it? I'll think it over. And I walked out his office. I was like, fucking come on. Cleared again to fight for another year. Was not paying attention to that whatsoever. And the way I always looked at it was, listen, detached retinas is something you hear about in combat sports, but it's not common. It happens here and there. And I thought to myself, well, lightning has struck. So lightning isn't going to strike twice, So I continued to push it throughout my career. I was continuing to fight, and I did not have a second fear. I never contemplated it for a moment that my other eye could go wrong. And then I lost my title to George St. Pierre. I took another fight a couple of weeks later when Anderson Silva tested positive for steroids. I knew my career was done, right? But he tested positive for steroids. They were actively looking for another fighter. And I always said to my wife, listen, when my title runs over, I'll retire. But then there was an opportunity to jump on a plane, fly out to China, have one last fight, get paid again, and end my career with a win. Do you know what I'm saying? So I did that. And in that fight, or after that fight, should I say, which did not go my way, I had no business being there. I'd just been choked out and battered for 3 rounds. I had no... beating another fight 2 weeks later was ludicrous, to be honest. But still, I gave it a shot.
Do you regret that decision to take the gas? Because I have to say, as a fan, and I'll show you how much of a fan I was in a bit, but as a fan, after that GSP fight, when I heard you took the Gastelum fight, I was genuinely concerned. We'd never met. I didn't know you.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, I don't think that's a good idea, because I know GSP, he won by the choke, but he caught you with a big shot before that. And I was like, a month or less than a month, 2 weeks, whatever it was, that's surely not enough to recover. And so do you look back on it and go, that was a bit silly? Or do you think, no, I got that paycheck?
No. See, for me, I always did this to take care of my family and give them the best life. And now, fortunately, I've got so much stuff going on outside of my fight career. It's all kind of linked to that, of course. But post-retirement, life is fantastic. And as we know, for a lot of athletes, when they stop playing whatever game or sport it is, life can be tough, life can be tricky. And I did this for my family, you know what I mean? So that, to me, in hindsight, now life's going great. But my moment, my choice at that time was to get another big payday to help set me up financially and my family. That my goal when I got into MMA, my goal was to earn enough money to be able to quit work, to go to college, you know what I mean, do some training and try and have a career, like a real job, you know what I mean? So it far exceeded all expectations. But after that fight, there was always an after party. The fight didn't go my well. We were at some stupid nightclub in Shanghai. And I'm sitting there, and every time I look left and then I look right, I started getting flashes of light. And it wasn't the lights in the club or nothing like that. Every time I look left and then I look back, there'd be a flash of light. And I was terrified because I thought, crap, I don't believe this. all my career, my doctors warned me, they begged me. So many people did. Friends said, Michael, don't do this. And I always said, lightning won't strike twice. And now it has struck, and I was terrified, and I was starting to cry in the nightclub. And I thought, I've got to get out of here because people are going to see me, and they're going to see me crying and think, oh, he's crying because he lost a fight. Bless him. I said, no, I'm not crying because I lost a bloody fight. Couldn't care less about that. I'm crying because I'm going to go blind, and I'm not going to see my children grow old. So I said, oh, lads, I'm just going to go to the toilet. And I went to the toilet, and I ran out of the club, and I just made it into a taxi before I broke down, bawling my eyes out, terrified, so scared. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, so to answer your question, yeah, there was many times, and even then after that fight, I was gonna do one more against Rashad Evans because I wanted to come back, and I'd romanced this thing in my mind that I was going to get to say farewell to all the people that supported me and put my gloves down in the middle of the octagon and all this, and and my manager said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And then it was a good friend of mine as well said, Michael, you would give every penny you have ever earned to get your vision back if you go blind. What are you doing? I said, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So yeah, so that was that.
It's great to see you back in the octagon, this time with a microphone in your hand, though.
Yeah.
It's a lot safer space to be in there. I mean, the film's so open and honest, and as somebody that's followed your career, your whole UFC career, there was so much in it that I didn't know about you. And I just wondered how you felt the first time you watched it back, and see your life laid so bare for the world to see.
Yeah, it's like, so we've got the premiere at the Manchester Film Festival, and I've got to go there, and I'm going to be talking about it and answering questions. And I'm nervous about that. I'm not nervous about public speaking or nothing like that. Number one, sitting there and watching a movie all about me is very self-absorbed, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But still, it is what it is. Aren't I great, everybody? Do you know what I mean? That's not me. But still, I'm forced to have to talk about myself all the time. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. Listen, I'm proud of the film. And I believe there's, it's not just all about, aren't I a tough guy? It delves into the losses and the psychology that goes into that. And Joe Rogan says some powerful words. And Michael Jai White is a great martial arts actor. He really goes into the psychology of why fighting is so important to men, some men. And so that side of it all, I love, and I love that it gives my journey. But yeah, it's a very raw insight. As I said, I'm not proud of every aspect of my life. I hate it when I have to sit here and talk like this. And then I say, and I went to prison and I was fighting all the time as a kid. That's not because I'm proud of it. It's because I look back on that phase of my life. And whilst I had some great friends and I had some great memories and some proper laughs, I was an idiot. I was an idiot with no direction. And I was making a lot of mistakes in my life. But that is my story. That is who I am. And that's where I came from, but I do also believe that and again, I sound very American. Maybe I've been here for too long, but I get told this all the time. A lot of people can draw some inspiration from it. It's never too late to turn your life around, and don't let circumstances and things like that hold you back, and I made the most of what I've got. And I always say this, I believe that everybody has a skill. Everybody's good at something. For me, it was fighting. As I said, that guy that I worked with who said, Michael, have a think about what you're good at, right? And then let me know. When I was working in that factory, I kept coming back to fighting. And when I spoke to him one day, he thought I was a bloody idiot when I said I was going to be a professional fighter. But but you don't know. You don't know who I am. You don't know what I'm made of. But what he was talking about there is that everyone's got a skill and everyone can take that somewhere, but you've got to you sit there, figure out what your skill is, regardless of what it is. And then what is the furthest that can take you, right? Because normally if you think about it and you've got a little bit of an entrepreneur mind to you, you can take it pretty far, and then you've got to put the plan in place, and then you've got to execute, because everybody can sit there and talk about it. Then you've got to get off your ass and you've got to do it, and you've got to start at the bottom. And that's essentially what I did. I put this plan into place. This guy that told me about the UFC, he said, listen, Michael, I'm telling you. And for a young guy that was broke, me and my wife worked, we ended the week, how it is. It's not an uncommon story. My wife was a dental nurse. I was working in a factory, both working. Still haven't got a penny to rub together. You know what I mean? Enough for a kebab and a couple of pints at the weekend. You know what I mean? And yeah, I forgot where I was there.
Well, you said about taking that journey far. I mean, you took that journey,
No, he said to me, he said, Michael, one day, he said, you're going to go to America. The champions are bona fide celebrities. He said, you're going to make a lot of money. He said, you're going to be doing acting in movies and all kinds of stuff. So that was the dream that he sold me, right? And that's what I always worked towards. Even though my backup plan was to earn some money and go to college, there was that dream, and that's what I always chased after. And I guess I made it a reality.
One of the things... Oh, go on, Stu.
No, go on. Go on.
No, I wanted to say, because one of the things I've always wanted to ask you was, because there's only few people in the world that can say they've managed to do this, that you're doing what you love, and there are potentially millions of people, me being one of them, that are so kind of feel emotionally attached to you and what you're doing in a point in time. And I wonder, have you ever sat back and really comprehended what it is for, like, for example, I watched your defense of the title at the MEN arena. I was at my in-laws house, and I got up early and went downstairs to watch it on the iPad, because I can't remember, it must have been someone's birthday coming out, and I was like, oh, I've got to go to the in-laws, and I've got to watch this on the iPad rather on the big screen and all that stuff. So I go downstairs, it's like 5 a.m. or whatever, and I'm watching it on the iPad, and every time Hendo lands a shot or even gets close to landing a shot, my heart's in my mouth. I'm like, oh my God, oh no, don't. And then every time you land a good combo, I'm like, yes, get him out. And I'm trying to suppress my noise so that I don't wake up my wife and my mother and father-in-law and stuff like that. And I've never met you. I don't really know who you are other than what you show people at the weigh-ins and all that stuff. What is it like to know that there are, or maybe you're not fully aware of it, to know that there are potentially millions of people around the world massively emotionally attached to you, the outcome of your fights, your career, and you've never met them. And to be honest, you'll probably never meet the vast majority of them. What's that like? That must be mental.
Yeah, it's a great question. And
thank you.
I can sit here. Not that good. Relax. No, I could sit here and be humble, right? And I do try to be. I haven't changed a little bit. I wish I could. It's too late now. I'm 42. I was up and now it's never going to. But I do realize what you're saying, because, for example, when I won the belt, the UFC arranged like a tour of England, promoting the UFC, let's be honest, but it was promoting me at the same time. And we went to the Trafford Centre, which is a massive shopping centre in Manchester. And I'm always so nervous. I'm like, no one's going to bloody show up to this. And literally thousands of people waited in line for hours to come up and meet me. And I've had grown men multiple times crying their eyes out and stuff. And like, it blows my mind. It blows, and it means so much to me. It really does. And I guess because I never realized that they're like, when I walked out UFC 70, my first fight in England, the roof came off the arena, the sound, it was so crazy. And I was like, what the hell? This is pre-social media days, and I didn't realize people had been watching me on TV when I was on The Ultimate Fighter. So they got to see an insight into me and my personality. So they all thought they knew me. And the support I've had has just been insane. And I don't want to sound like a wanker saying that, but also at the same time, I'm doing a disservice to myself, but more importantly, the people that did support me, to not acknowledge it. And it's been incredible. And it's been something that I never, ever would have ever imagined possible. And it's not why I went into this, but the support I've had is ridiculous. And it was that reason why I wanted to do one more fight in London and push it a little bit further, because I was so grateful. And I did a tour recently, Tales from the Octagon, where it's like a one-man show where I'm talking. There was 3,500 people showed up in Manchester for it. It was crazy. And then at the end of that, what I do is I put my gloves down on the stage and I tell them I always wanted to do it in London in the middle of the Octagon, but I never got a chance to do that. So I'm putting my gloves down here, and I dedicate this to you. And every time I did it, it gets a standing ovation. By the way, coming back in October and November next year. So if you haven't got your ticket, myticket.co.uk.
Great segue.
But there we go. But yeah, it's, to summarize it in one word, it's mental. It's mental, mate. It's mental. It's crazy. And even now, so now I do a YouTube channel, which I never thought I would have been doing. The support I get on that is crazy. I only just started doing it. I've got 325,000 subscribers already, like almost overnight. And the comments that I get back from people are so enriching, the things that they say. And I'm just a little idiot. I'm a young lad. I'm still the same. I'm still an immature bastard. I wish I could grow up a bit more. I'm like, now I think I've matured to like a 25, 27-year-old. When I was younger, I was still highly emotional, like a teenager. Do you know what I mean? And to see the support I get, I haven't, I'm just a little lad. I'm Mick from Clitheroe. My old mates call me Mick. I'm just Mick from Clitheroe. Do you know what I mean? And the support I get, it means the world to me. It does. And I know I sound like a wanker for saying that, but it's true. And that's not what I mean, but you asked me. And as I say, I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't actually say thank you to everyone for that.
And make no mistake, you've obviously earned every single thing that you've achieved. And some of these moments, must have been like absolute fucking hell, this is surreal. And we always like to sort of mention to fighters imposter syndrome. And you've reached the very top of the tree and you've been in that octagon and you've been on film sets. Has there ever been a moment where you've had that imposter syndrome? I mean, obviously mean that with the greatest respect, but I just thought, how am I here? This is bananas or what I'm about to do. Like, have you ever experienced that?
Many times, because I always thought, and I was always terrified that what I was doing right now was not a reality. And what I mean by that is that this is just, it's a bubble. It's a short moment in time. It's a blip on my timeline of my life. Do you know what I mean? And it's going to come to a crashing end. And yeah, it's a great ride right now, but it's not going to be long before I'm back down the job center looking for a job. Do you know what I mean? And clocking in again, and I guess that attitude is always what kept me humble and kept me working hard. You know what I mean? I remember stepping onto a film set in Toronto and I'm going to meet Vin Diesel and he's welcoming me to the movie. And I'm like, what am I doing here? This isn't me. I'm faking it big time and pretending I've been there 1,000 times. Oh, yeah, we're going to go down the costume department later and get a fitting. And I'm like, what? Act like you've been here before. Act like you've been here before. Do you know what I mean? So it's been mental, But as I say, because fighters, athletes, life post-fighting or athletic career can be hard. And I never allowed myself to think I'd made it. It wasn't that long ago, really, that I did think, wow, finally, I think I've left that old life behind. And I remember it. I was driving off from the gym one day. I had a big fight coming up in Manchester. And it's when I still lived back home in Clitheroe. And I was driving past the King's Arms, which is a pub where I got arrested that night when I ended up going to prison. I was outside there. And I drove past it and I drove past the pub. And there was a bunch of people outside having a beer and stuff. And that used to be my life. I used to be one of those lads outside there having a beer. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? I'm not judging people. But I drove past and it gave me a flashback. And I thought, look at me now. I just bought a brand new bloody Audi S7. I'm in a sick car. I've got a big fight coming up. And I just went, yes, to myself. I didn't plan it. It just these emotions came out. And that was the only time I allowed myself a little pat on the back. And I was like, yeah, we're doing all right, Michael. We're doing all right.
Well, you've definitely done more than all right, and we're aware we're getting short on time with you now. But
yeah, I got to bail in a minute because I got the Believe You Me podcast, and Kelvin Kate is jumping on, so I'm going to send him after you. But go on, we'll allow this to wrap up organically.
I'll hit you with a couple of quick fire questions if you don't mind. What felt better, beating Rockhold and winning the belt, or beating Hendo and defending the belt in Manchester?
I would like to say defending the belt in Manchester because that was such an important thing for me to bring the belt back home to the UK and thank everybody that supported me. But knocking Rockhold out in the first round, jumping on top of that cage, and then having Dana White wrap the belt around you. Come on, man. That is stuff of dreams.
It's the answer I wanted. I'm not going to lie. So, I'm going to remove Leon Edwards from this equation because it looks like
I know what you're going to say. Who's the next British champ? Because
or title challenger, whatever you think. Go on, go for it.
Yes. So Leon is incredible, and if it wasn't for Kamaru Usman, I think he'd be a champion. Now, I'm not saying he won't be a champion. I'm just saying Kamaru Usman is the pound for pound best guy on the planet right now. So he's got his hands full. But it'll be a hell of a fight. And he might win, but I'm just saying, it comes with that caveat because he's incredible. Outside of that, obviously, we've got Darren Till, right? Darren's fallen on some tough times lately, but he's still only 28 years old. He's still a baby, and I mean that with respect. There's a guy called Arnold Allen doing great things. There's Lerone Murphy, right? The UK MMA has never been at his strongest, but in terms of the next title challenger, I think Tom Aspinall, and he's the main event at UFC London in March. I'll be there. To your point, it's going to be great to step back in that octagon in London. For me, it's going to be such a special moment, even though it's not about me. But when I step in there with a microphone in my hand, it's just going to feel like a homecoming in many ways. And Tom Aspinall's 4-0 in the UFC, moves like a middleweight, gigantic, lifelong martial artist, and he's just incredible. And I wouldn't be surprised if he fights for a belt sometime soon.
Yeah. That's a great answer. And is there anyone you wish you'd have fought that you never got the chance to fight? I mean, you fought GSP, Anderson Silva. You've kind of fought the best of the best, really. So, but is there anyone that eluded you that you wish, oh, I wish I'd have fought them?
Yeah, there was a few. I always get a lot of stick for not fighting Yoel Romero. But
I love you, Michael.
I love you, Michael. Robert Whittaker and Yoel Romero had a #1 contender matchup. Yoel lost. Okay, I went into the cage and I challenged Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker then got injured, and then George St. Pierre came, so I didn't duck him. So, but maybe him, because it would have shut up all the trolls online. Rich Franklin was always somebody that I admired because he was the champ when I first went over to the UFC. There's many people, but we'll go with Rich Franklin for now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Mike, it's been an absolute joy. Thanks so much for your time, mate.
No, listen, I've absolutely loved talking to you. That hour absolutely flew by. And seriously, if I could, I'd love to give you more time, but I got the podcast boys. They're going to be saying, where is he? Where is he? I bet you lot were cursing me because I was like 3 minutes late. Trust me, they're worse than you.
Only ever behind your back. Never to your face. Okay, that's fine. But yeah,
well, that's how the British do all their shit talking.
That's it. Honestly, this has been such a joy and a pleasure for me. I mean, I was there cage side at the Anderson Silva fight. Big Nog was sitting next to me, and when Anderson hit that flying knee, he stood up, and I was like, "No, fuck you, Big Nog." But obviously, I wouldn't. Yeah. And as soon as you won that fight, that 5th round, me and my brother were on our feet. We were just going nuts. Absolutely loved it. And for me, you versus Anderson Silva is the biggest, best sporting event I've ever been to live. It really was incredible for me. So having this chat with you means the world. Thanks very much, mate.
Well, I've had a lovely time. Thank you for those kind words. Really, really appreciate it. Really enjoyed the chat. Good luck with the podcast. And I'm happy to talk again sometime. So Blake and Stu, great talking to you, fellas. Thank you again for the kind words, and all the best.
Top man.
Thank you very much, mate. Have a good one. Say hi to Calvin for us.
Will do. Cheers, fellas. Take care. Bye-bye.